The giant space station floated in the darkness between stars. It was bigger than most moons, made of shining metal and glowing crystals. Ships from 1,000 different worlds docked at its many ports. This was Harmony Station, the heart of the Galactic Council. Ambassador Zexathara walked through the main council chamber on her 6 legs. Her blue skin shimmered under the bright lights. She had served the council for over 300 years, welcoming new species into their great family of worlds. Today was special. Today they would meet a new species called humans. The council chamber was huge. Beings from 847 different worlds sat in floating chairs, arranged in circles. Some looked like giant insects. Others were made of living crystal. A few were just clouds of gas held together by energy fields. All of them were much more advanced than the humans. "The new species has been studied," Zexathara announced. Her voice echoed through the chamber. "They call themselves humans. They come from a small blue planet in the outer arm of the galaxy. Our science teams have watched them for 10 years. General Vorth stood up from his seat. He was 12 feet tall with gray skin and 4 arms. His people, the Zalanti, had been warriors for thousands of years before they learned to fight with machines instead of their bodies. "What is their technology level?" General Vorth asked. "Very low," Zexathara replied. "They barely know how to travel between stars. Their weapons are primitive. They still use kinetic energy, throwing metal pieces very fast. They have no energy shields, no plasma weapons. Their computers are simple. The other council members made sounds of amusement. Some laughed with musical tones. Others buzzed like insects. A few just glowed brighter. "Another Category 7 species," said Councillor Flux, who was made of living electricity. "We should offer them standard protectorate status. Limited trade, no military involvement, complete technology quarantine until they evolve." This was normal. The council had seen thousands of young species. They always followed the same path. First, they learned to make energy weapons. Then they built shields. Then they created smart machines to fight for them. Finally, they joined the council as equals. No species had ever become equal without following this path. It was impossible. The universe had rules. "The humans are sending a ship," Zexathara continued. "It will arrive in 6 hours. They want to talk." The council members settled in to wait. This would be routine. The humans would be offered protectorate status they would accept, grateful for the chance to learn from their betters. In a few thousand years, maybe their descendants would be advanced enough for real membership. 6 hours later, alarms chimed softly. A human ship had arrived. The council members looked at it through their viewing screens and laughed again. The ship was tiny compared to their vessels. It was made of simple metal, not the living crystal or pure energy most advanced species used. Smoke came from its engines, actual chemical smoke like a fire. "Primitive," General Vorth said, shaking his large head. The human ship docked. Security scanners checked it for weapons. The scanners found some, but they were all kinetic. Metal throwers, chemical explosives, simple things. Nothing that could threaten the station's energy shields. The airlock opened. The first human stepped out. Captain Sarah Chen was small compared to most council species. She stood only 5.5 feet tall, with dark hair and brown eyes. She wore a blue uniform with metal decorations. Behind her came 5 more humans in different clothing. They were all small, all fragile-looking, but Zexathara noticed something odd. The humans moved differently than most species. Their eyes never stopped scanning. They watched everything, ready for danger that wasn't there, like predators or prey that had learned to fight back. "Welcome to Harmony Station," Zexathara said in perfect human English. The council's computers had learned their language years ago. "I am Ambassador Zexathara. We are honored to meet your species." Captain Chen bowed her head slightly. "Thank you, Ambassador. I'm Captain Sarah Chen, representing Earth and all human colonies." We're grateful for this meeting." The formal ceremony began. It had been the same for thousands of years. The council would explain their great civilization. They would offer protectorate status. The new species would accept. "The Galactic Council has maintained peace for 50,000 years," Zexthera explained as they walked through the station's grand halls. "We represent 847 species across the galaxy. We have eliminated war, hunger, and suffering from most worlds." Captain Chen listened politely. Her guards, that's what they had to be, though they didn't look like any guards. The council knew, stayed alert. They kept looking around like they expected an attack. "That's impressive," Captain Chen said. "How do you maintain peace across so many worlds?" "Technology," General Vorth answered. He had joined the tour, curious about these strange newcomers. "Our weapons are beyond your understanding. Our defenses cannot be broken. When there is a dispute, our machines settle it quickly and fairly." "No more organic warfare," added Councillor Flux. "No more soldiers dying uselessly. Pure, clean, efficient combat between machines." Captain Chen nodded. "We still use soldiers. Human soldiers." The council members exchanged glances. Of course they did. Primitive species always did, until they learned better. They reached the main council chamber. Captain Chen and her team were given seats in the center. Hundreds of alien beings looked down at them from their floating chairs. "We offer your species protectorate status," Zexthera announced formally. "You will receive limited trading rights with council worlds. You will be protected from hostile species. In exchange, you will accept technological quarantine and guidance from council advisors." Captain Chen was quiet for a long moment. Her team whispered among themselves in a language the computers hadn't learned yet. "We appreciate the offer," Captain Chen finally said, "but we'd prefer equal partnership status." The chamber fell silent. Then slowly, laughter began. It started with a few quiet chuckles and grew louder. Soon, hundreds of alien beings were laughing in hundreds of different ways. "Equal partnership?" General Vorth could barely speak through his laughter. "Child, no species has ever been granted equality without proving military capability. You would need to demonstrate that your forces could match ours in combat." "We understand," Captain Chen said calmly. "We accept that challenge." The laughter stopped. This was not normal. New species were supposed to be humble, grateful, and careful. They didn't challenge the Council's military might. "You don't understand," Zexthera said gently. "This isn't a game. Our military trials are designed to test advanced civilizations. Your kinetic weapons and organic soldiers would be destroyed in minutes." "Maybe," Captain Chen agreed. "But we'd like to try." General Vorth leaned forward. "This might be interesting, after all." "Very well. The standard trial is capture and hold a fortified position against our automated defenses. The testing facility is on Kepler 442c. How many ships will you need for your assault force?" "One ship will be fine," Captain Chen said. "How many soldiers?" 12. The chamber erupted again. 12 soldiers against a fortress designed to stop entire fleets? This was either bravery or madness. "You have 48 hours to prepare," General Vorth said. "We'll meet at Kepler 442c. As the humans left, Zexthera felt something she hadn't experienced in centuries. Uncertainty. These humans were different. They acted like they knew something the Council didn't. But that was impossible. The Council knew everything about warfare. They had perfected it over 50,000 years, didn't they? Kepler 442c was a dead world. It had once been green and blue like Earth, but that was millions of years ago. Now it was nothing but gray rock, dust, and craters. The Galactic Council had bought this world from its dying star and turned it into their greatest military testing ground. The fortress sat in the center of a wide plain. It was a perfect black cube, 2 miles on each side, made from materials harder than diamond. Energy barriers flickered around it like heat waves. Plasma turrets poked out from its walls like deadly flowers. In the sky above, clouds of hunter-killer. Drones waited like metal vultures. General Vorth stood in the command center of the observation station. Through the great windows, he could see the entire testing area. Behind him, military observers from dozens of species watched screens and checked their instruments. This was the most excitement the testing facility had seen in years. "Explain the defenses again," said Admiral Kextall of the Hive Queens. She was 8 feet tall and looked like a golden praying mantis. "For those of us who've never seen the trials." General Vorth pointed at the fortress with one of his 4 arms. "The outer perimeter has 50 plasma turrets. Each one can melt a battleship's armor in seconds. The energy barriers can stop anything. Projectiles, energy beams, even antimatter rounds." He gestured to the sky. 300 hunter-killer drones patrol the airspace. They're controlled by the Fortress AI, which can think 1,000,000 times faster than any organic brain. The AI learns from every attack, adapting its defenses in real time. "And inside the fortress?" asked Commander Ziltok, "a being made of living metal. Internal defenses include automated gun turrets, energy maze walls that shift every few seconds, and atmospheric processors that can fill any room with poison gas or remove all oxygen," General Vorth continued. "The objective is in the center, a simple flag that must be captured and held for 1 hour." The observers murmured their approval. This was military science at its finest. Pure technology, efficient and deadly. "What's the record?" Admiral Kextall asked. "The Vorthon Collective's elite cyber commandos managed to breach the outer perimeter once," General Vorth said proudly. "They lasted 14 minutes before the AI destroyed their entire assault force of 200 units. A junior officer approached. "General, the human ship has arrived." Through the observation windows, they could see a small, ugly spacecraft landing near the fortress. Smoke poured from its engines. Actual smoke, like it was on fire. "Are they having technical difficulties?" Ambassador Zexathera asked. She had come to watch the trial, still curious about these strange humans. "No," said the scanning technician. "That's just how their engines work. Chemical combustion, very primitive." The human ship's doors opened. 12 figures walked out, carrying equipment. At this distance, they looked like tiny insects next to the massive fortress. "Magnify the image," General Vorth ordered. The screens zoomed in. The humans were wearing strange, bulky suits that covered their entire bodies. The suits were colored in patches of green and brown, like some kind of camouflage pattern. Each human carried a different collection of equipment: long metal tubes, rectangular boxes, coils of rope. "What are those suits?" asked Commander Ziltok. "Atmospheric protection, probably," suggested the scanning technician. "Their species might not be able to breathe the air mixture we use for testing." General Vorth studied the equipment the humans carried. "Those metal tubes must be their weapons, primitive kinetic launchers, I'd guess. The boxes could be ammunition." Storage. Very inefficient design. Captain Chen's voice came over the communication system. "Test control, this is Captain Chen. We're ready to begin when you are." "Captain Chen," General Vorth replied, "are you certain you don't want to reconsider? This trial has destroyed the finest military forces in the galaxy. 12 soldiers with primitive equipment cannot possibly succeed." "We appreciate your concern, General, but we're ready." General Vorth looked around the observation room. Military. Officers from 30 different species watched the screens with amusement. Some were already placing bets on how quickly the humans would be eliminated. "The average time for complete destruction is 7.3 minutes, announced the betting coordinator, a small purple being with dozens of eyes. "Current odds favor elimination in under 5 minutes. "I'll take that bet," said Admiral Kextall. "These humans seem confident. Maybe they'll last 6 minutes. "Impossible," laughed Commander Ziltok. "Organic beings against the Fortress AI? 3 minutes maximum." General Vorth raised one hand. "Begin the trial," he announced. Alarms began to sound across the testing ground. The fortress came alive. Energy barriers brightened. Plasma turrets swiveled, searching for targets. Hunter-killer drones spread out in perfect formations. The humans didn't move. "Are they frozen?" asked Ambassador Zexathara after 2 minutes. Had passed. "Scanning," reported the technician. "All human life signs are normal. They appear to be waiting." "Waiting for what?" General Vorth demanded. 5 minutes passed. 10 minutes. The humans lay motionless in scattered positions around the fortress perimeter. The fortress AI began to scan more actively, trying to understand why the attackers weren't attacking. "Maybe they don't understand the test," suggested Admiral Kexatol. "Should we remind them that they need to capture the fortress?" "They understand," Captain Chen's voice said calmly over the communication system. "We're just getting ready." "Ready for what?" General Vorth asked. "You've been lying there for 15 minutes. Sometimes the best way to start a fight is to not start fighting," Captain Chen replied. "Your AI is very smart, General, but right now it's confused. It knows we're here, but it can't figure out what we're planning. Confusion is opportunity." 20 minutes passed. The fortress AI began to send out scout drones, trying to get closer looks at the motionless humans. The drones flew in perfect. Patterns, their sensors recording everything. Then something impossible happened. One of the plasma turrets simply stopped working. No explosion, no energy discharge. It just went dark. "What was that?" General Vorth demanded. "Unknown," the scanning technician replied, checking his instruments frantically. "Sensors show no weapon discharge, no energy signature, nothing." 2 minutes later, another turret went dark. Then another. "Are the humans doing this?" Ambassador Zexathara asked. "How?" The scanning beams swept across the human positions. They were still there, still motionless. But something was definitely happening to the fortress defenses. "Enhance. Audio sensors," General Vorth ordered. "Maximum sensitivity." The speakers crackled to life. For a moment, there was only wind. Then they heard it, a very faint sound, like a stick breaking but sharper. A few seconds later, another plasma turret went dark. "By the ancient stars," whispered Commander Ziltok. "They're shooting at the turrets, from outside the perimeter." "Impossible," General Vorth said. "Our sensors show no energy weapons firing. No plasma. No particle beams. Nothing." "Not energy weapons," Admiral Kextol said slowly. "Kinetic weapons. They're throwing metal pieces so fast our sensors can't track them." The fortress AI finally figured out what was happening. Hunter-killer. Drones swarmed toward the positions where the shots seemed to be coming from. Their weapons charged, ready to destroy the hidden attackers. The drones found nothing. Empty ground. Scattered rocks. No humans. But the humans were still there, according to the life sign detectors. Somewhere. More plasma turrets went dark. The fortress AI began to adapt, moving the remaining turrets to new positions, changing their patrol patterns. But it couldn't. Shoot back at enemies it couldn't see. "How are they doing this?" General Vorth asked no one in particular. "They're hiding," Ambassador Zexathara said with wonder. "But not from our sensors. They're hiding from the AI's targeting systems. They know exactly how our technology works." 6 hours into the trial, half the fortress's outer defenses were offline. The hunter-killer drones flew in increasingly desperate patterns, trying to find attackers who seemed to appear and disappear like ghosts. The betting coordinator's voice was very quiet. "Current odds have shifted significantly." Master Sergeant Rodriguez lay perfectly still behind a pile of rocks that hadn't been there an hour ago. He had moved them himself, one by one, creating a shooting position that the fortress AI couldn't see. His rifle was pressed against his shoulder, the scope showing him a perfect view of the fortress 2 kilometers away. The weapon in his hands was older than some civilizations in the galaxy. It used chemical explosives to throw a piece of metal very, very fast. No energy signature, no heat bloom that the AI could detect. Just physics. Mass times velocity equals impact. Through his scope, Rodriguez watched another plasma turret swing toward a position where he wasn't. The AI was still trying to figure out where the shots were coming from. It was very smart, but it thought like a computer. It expected patterns, energy signatures, logical attack strategies. Rodriguez didn't fight logically. He fought like a human. He squeezed the trigger. The rifle bucked against his shoulder. 2 kilometers away, a .50 caliber bullet punched through the plasma turret's energy-focusing chamber. The turret sparked once and went dark. "Tango down," Rodriguez whispered into his radio. "That's number 23. "Copy that, Rodriguez," came Captain Chen's voice. "Nice shooting. Kim, you're up." 300 meters to Rodriguez's left, Corporal Kim rose from a hole in the ground that hadn't existed that morning. She had spent 4 hours digging it with a simple shovel, creating a spider hole that was invisible from above. Her weapon was different from Rodriguez's rifle, a shoulder-mounted missile launcher loaded with explosives that would have been considered primitive anywhere else in the galaxy. The hunter-killer drones were swarming now, desperately searching for the attackers. They flew in perfect mathematical patterns, their sensors recording everything. They were beautiful machines, each one worth more than most planets' entire military budgets. They were also predictable. Kim waited until 3. Drones passed overhead in formation, then popped up from her hole. The missile streaked upward, its simple chemical guidance system tracking the nearest drone. The explosion lit up the gray sky, taking out all 3 drones at once. Before the other drones could target her position, Kim was gone, vanished back, into her hole like she had never been there. The Fortress AI tried to adapt. It sent drones to investigate the explosion site. It found a hole in the ground, traces of chemical explosives and boot prints in the dust. But no human. The AI increased its scanning frequency. It deployed additional sensor drones. It began firing plasma bursts at every rock, every depression in the ground, every shadow that might hide an attacker. None of it worked. Sergeant Walsh emerged from a camouflaged position that the AI had scanned a dozen times without seeing. His specialty was demolitions, and he had spent 6 hours crawling through the fortress's outer sensor net, placing charges on the energy barrier generators. The barriers that protected the fortress were beautiful things, sheets of pure energy that could stop antimatter rounds, deflect plasma beams, and absorb any form of directed energy attack. They had one weakness that their creators had never considered. They needed power generators, physical machines buried in the ground, machines that could be reached by a human with explosives and no fear of getting dirty. Walsh pressed the detonator. 6 carefully placed charges exploded simultaneously. The energy barriers flickered and died. "Barriers down," Walsh reported. "We have a clear path to the walls." In the observation station, General Vorth stared at the screens in disbelief. "This is impossible," he said for the 10th time that hour. "How are they doing this?" "They're not fighting our technology," Ambassador Zexathara said quietly. "They're fighting around it. Under it. They're using tactics that predate energy weapons." "But those tactics are obsolete," Admiral Kextall protested. "We evolved past them tens of thousands of years ago. Kinetic weapons can't penetrate modern armor. Explosives are inefficient compared to plasma charges. Individual soldiers are vulnerable compared to automated systems. And yet," Commander Ziltok said, pointing at the screens, "individual soldiers are destroying our automated systems with kinetic weapons and explosives." The humans were moving now, advancing toward the fortress in a way that hurt the observers. Brains to watch. They didn't move in straight lines or geometric patterns. They zigzagged. They crawled. They used every rock, every crater, every shadow for cover. Sometimes they moved forward. Sometimes they moved sideways. Once, Sergeant Martinez actually moved backward for 50 meters, just to confuse the AI's prediction algorithms. The Fortress AI sent its remaining drones to stop them. The drones were fast, deadly, and equipped with weapons that could level city blocks. They should have ended the attack in seconds. Instead, they flew into a trap. Private Johnson had found a narrow canyon between 2 rocky outcrops. It was barely wide enough for the drones to fly through single file. At the far end of the canyon, he set up his machine gun and waited. The drones came in fast, their weapons charging for a devastating attack. Johnson opened fire with a weapon that was ancient when humans first reached for the stars. The gun fired metal bullets at 600 rounds per minute, each one guided only by simple ballistics. The first drone exploded, its wreckage blocked the canyon. The second drone crashed into the wreckage. The third drone tried to reverse course, but the canyon was too narrow. Johnson destroyed 9 drones in 30 seconds using a weapon that cost less than one of their targeting computers. Impossible, General Vorth whispered, but the word was starting to lose its meaning. Staff Sergeant Williams had reached the fortress wall. The wall was made of materials that could withstand asteroid impacts. It was smooth, seamless, and supposedly unclimbable. Williams pulled a rope from his pack. At the end of the rope was a simple metal hook. He threw the hook upward, where it caught on a tiny imperfection in the wall's surface. Then he began to climb, hand over hand, using a technique that was old when humans first learned to make fire. The Fortress AI watched him climb and tried to understand what it was seeing. Its database contained information on every known climbing technology: anti-gravity harnesses, molecular adhesion suits, energy tethers. It had countermeasures for all of them. It had no countermeasures for a human with a rope and a hook. Williams reached the top of the wall and planted a small device. Not a sophisticated piece of technology, just a simple radio beacon. But it told the other humans exactly where to focus their attack. Rodriguez adjusted his rifle and fired. The bullet traveled 2 kilometers through the air and struck the exact point Williams had marked. The bullet didn't penetrate the wall. That was impossible. Instead, it delivered a tiny shaped charge that Williams had placed against the wall's inner surface. The explosion was small, barely noticeable, but it was perfectly positioned to damage the wall's structural integrity at its weakest point. The Fortress AI detected the explosion and began immediate repairs. Tiny robots swarmed out to fix the damage. They worked with incredible efficiency, rebuilding the walls stronger than before. They never noticed Sergeant Thompson sliding down the rope Williams had left behind. Thompson landed inside the fortress just as the repair robots finished their work. He was armed with simple weapons, chemical explosives, a kinetic rifle, and equipment that would have looked familiar to soldiers from centuries past. The Fortress AI detected his presence immediately and activated its internal defenses. Gun. Turrets swiveled toward his position. Energy barriers sprang up to trap him. Poison gas began to flood the corridor where he stood. Thompson put on a gas mask and kept moving. Internal perimeter breached, Captain Chen's voice announced calmly. Beginning final phase. In the observation station, the betting coordinator's voice was barely a whisper. All bets are suspended. This is unprecedented. General Vorth couldn't speak at all. He just watched as everything he understood about warfare crumbled into dust. Inside the fortress, Sergeant Thompson moved through corridors that shifted and changed like a living maze. The Fortress AI was throwing everything it had at him: walls that moved, floors that opened into pits, ceiling turrets that fired streams of plasma. Thompson ignored most of it. When a wall slid across his path, he didn't try to find the control panel or hack the system. He placed a small explosive charge against the wall and blew a hole through it. When the floor opened beneath his feet, he didn't use anti-gravity technology. He drove metal spikes into the walls and rappelled down on a rope. The AI's defenses were designed to stop sophisticated attackers using advanced technology. Thompson wasn't sophisticated. He was just very, very good at breaking things. Internal defenses are not responding effectively, the Fortress AI reported to the observation station. Its voice sounded confused, which should have been impossible for a machine intelligence. What do you mean? General Vorth demanded. The intruder is using methods not found in my tactical database, the AI replied. He appears to be creating new passages through the walls rather than using existing corridors. He is ignoring environmental hazards that should be lethal. His movement patterns do not match any known infiltration doctrine. On the screens, they watched Thompson punch through another wall. Behind him, other humans were climbing through the holes he had made. Captain Chen herself was third through the breach, carrying a weapon that looked like it had been built in a garage. "Ma'am," Thompson called back to her, "Central corridor is clear. Automated defenses are focusing on the upper levels. Lower route is open." "Good work, Thompson," Chen replied. "Martinez, take point. Williams, watch R6. Everyone else, standard room clearing. Watch for crossfire." General Vorth had never heard these terms before. "Standard room clearing? What does that mean?" Ambassador Zexathara was studying the eye screens intently. "They're using tactical formations," she said. "But not for fighting machines. They're fighting as if there might be enemy soldiers in every room." "But there are no enemy soldiers," Admiral Kextall pointed out. "Just automated defenses." "They know that," Zexathara replied. "But they're still treating each room like it might contain organic opponents. Look at how they move." On the screens, the humans advanced through the fortress in a way that made no tactical sense to the observers. They checked corners that couldn't possibly hide threats. They covered angles that the AI's weapons couldn't use. They moved in coordinated groups, each member watching a different direction, as if expecting attacks that would never come. But somehow, this nonsensical approach was working perfectly. When automated turrets dropped from the ceiling, the humans were already aiming at the spots where they would appear. When poison gas flooded a corridor, the humans had already moved to positions where the ventilation system couldn't reach them. When energy barriers tried to separate the team, the humans had already planted explosives in exactly the right places to bring the barriers down. "How are they predicting the AI's responses?" Commander Ziltok asked. "They can't possibly be calculating faster than a machine intelligence." "They're not calculating," Zexathara said with growing amazement. "They're not trying to outthink the AI at all. They're doing something else entirely." Sergeant Martinez kicked open another door and immediately dove to the right. Plasma fire scorched the air where he had been standing. The fortress AI had predicted his movement perfectly if he had been using logical tactics. But Martinez wasn't being logical. He was being paranoid. The difference saved his life. Private Davis followed Martinez through the door, firing his rifle at targets that shouldn't have been there but somehow were. His bullets punched through the AI's defensive positions, destroying weapons that had been perfectly hidden from the fortress sensors. "How did you know that turret was there?" Martinez asked as they moved deeper into the fortress. "Felt wrong," Davis replied with a shrug. "Room was too empty. Something had to be covering the entrance." This was the thing that broke General Vorth's understanding completely. The humans weren't using sensors or computers or tactical analysis. They were using intuition, gut feelings, instincts that had been programmed into them by millions of years of evolution. The Fortress AI was the most advanced tactical computer in the galaxy. It could process millions of variables simultaneously, predict enemy movements with mathematical precision, and adapt its strategies in real time. But it couldn't understand paranoia. It couldn't predict irrational behavior. It couldn't counter tactics that made no logical sense, but somehow worked anyway. Captain Chen reached the fortress. Core first. The flag was there, exactly where it was supposed to be. A simple piece of cloth on a metal pole. Around it, the Fortress AI had prepared its final surprise. The room was a perfect killing ground. Every angle was covered by hidden weapons. Every approach was monitored by sensors. Every possible hiding spot had been eliminated. The AI had calculated that no force could survive in this room for more than 30 seconds. Chen walked in anyway. Weapons fired from every direction. Plasma beams, particle cannons, energy disruptors, everything the Fortress AI had left to throw at her. The weapons were perfectly aimed, mathematically precise, absolutely lethal. They all missed, not because Chen was faster than light or protected by shields. They missed because Chen wasn't where the AI expected her to be. She moved like a human being, unpredictably, irrationally, in ways that made no mathematical sense but somehow worked. She dove behind a piece of debris that shouldn't have provided enough cover but did. She rolled in a direction that the AI's calculations said was tactically unsound but turned out to be perfect. She fired her primitive kinetic weapon at targets that logic said were invulnerable but somehow took damage anyway. And then, while the Fortress AI was still trying to understand what had happened, Chen grabbed the flag. "Objective secured," she announced calmly. "Beginning timer, 1 hour to hold position." In the observation station, nobody spoke for a long moment. "They did it," Admiral Kextall finally whispered. "They actually did it." "No," General Vorth said, slowly. "They didn't just do it, they made it look easy." Captain Chen's voice came over the communication system. "General Vorth, we'd like to request a meeting after the trial period is complete. We have some things we'd like to discuss." "What kind of things?" Vorth asked. "Well," Chen replied, and they could hear the smile in her voice. "We'd like to talk about what boots on the ground actually means, and why your AI keeps trying to fight a war that ended 50,000 years ago." The Fortress AI made one last attempt to retake its core. It sent every remaining weapon, every drone, every defensive system it had left. The attack was perfectly coordinated, mathematically precise, and absolutely overwhelming. The 12 humans destroyed it all in 17 minutes. When the hour was up, Captain Chen was still holding the flag. Her team was still alive. The Fortress, the most advanced military installation in the galaxy, was completely neutralized. "Trial complete," Chen announced. "Ready for pickup whenever you are." General Vorth looked around the observation station. Military officers from 30 species stared at the screens in stunned silence. Everything they thought they knew about warfare had just been proven wrong by 12 humans with primitive weapons. "I think," he said slowly, "we need to have a very different conversation than the one we planned." The Great Council chamber was silent. 847 species from across the galaxy had sent their representatives to witness something that had never happened before in recorded history. The emergency session had been called within hours of the trial's completion, and now every being in the chamber was trying to understand what they had seen. Captain Chen stood in the center of the chamber, still wearing her combat uniform. She looked small and fragile compared to the alien beings surrounding her, but nobody in the room doubted her capabilities anymore. Behind her, her 11 soldiers stood at attention, their primitive weapons visible for all to see. General Vorth rose from his seat, all 4 of his arms trembling slightly. "Captain Chen," he said, his voice carrying across the silent chamber, "we need to understand what happened. Our finest military minds have studied the recordings of your trial, and we cannot explain how you succeeded." Chen nodded respectfully. "I'd be happy to explain, General, but first, I think there's something important you need to understand about humans." She gestured to her soldiers. "These aren't our best warriors. They're not our elite special forces or our most advanced military units. They're standard infantry, basic soldiers. Every human colony has thousands just like them." A wave of shocked murmurs rippled through the chamber. Commander Ziltok leaned forward. "You mean there are more like them?" "Millions more," Chen replied, calmly. "But that's not the important part. The important part is understanding why our methods worked when yours didn't." Ambassador Zexathera spoke up. "Please explain. Our weapons are more powerful, our defenses stronger, our computers faster. How did primitive kinetic weapons defeat advanced energy systems?" Chen smiled. "Because you've forgotten something that we never had the luxury of forgetting. You've been using machines to fight machines for so long that you stopped thinking like living beings." She walked to the center of the chamber, her voice carrying clearly to every corner. Your Fortress AI is incredible. It can think 1,000,000 times faster than any organic brain. It can calculate trajectories, predict movements, and adapt its strategies in real time. But it thinks like a computer. What's wrong with that? Asked Admiral Kextall. Computers are logical, Chen explained. They expect rational behavior. They predict based on mathematical models. Your AI knew exactly how an energy weapon would behave, how a shielded soldier would move, how an automated drone would attack. But it had no idea how a human would think. She pointed to Sergeant Rodriguez, who stepped forward. Rodriguez, explain your shooting positions to the general. Rodriguez cleared his throat nervously. Well, sir, I picked spots that didn't make tactical sense. Places where the angles were wrong, where the cover was incomplete, where a logical sniper wouldn't set up. The AI kept looking for me in the right places, so I stayed in the wrong ones. General Vorth's confusion was evident. But that's inefficient, illogical. Exactly, Chen said. And that's why it worked. Your AI spent 50,000 years learning to fight logical opponents. It never learned to fight crazy ones. Counselor Flux's electrical form flickered with interest. But surely this is just a temporary advantage. Our AIs can learn from this experience and adapt. They can try, Chen agreed. But they'll always be one step behind, because they're trying to understand something that can't be calculated. Human intuition. Gut feelings, the ability to make decisions that don't make sense but somehow work. She gestured to Private Davis. Davis, why did you know that turret was there? It felt wrong, ma'am, Davis replied. Can't really explain it. The room just looked like it was trying too hard to seem empty. Felt wrong, Chen repeated, looking around the chamber. Your computers can't feel. They can't have hunches. They can't look at a situation and just know something's off. But evolution gave us those abilities because they kept us alive. Ambassador Zexthara was beginning to understand. You're saying that millions of years of survival instincts gave you advantages that our technology can't replicate? Partially, Chen said. But there's more. Your species have been at peace for thousands of years. Your conflicts are settled by machines in clean, efficient battles. You've forgotten what war really looks like. She pointed to the viewing screens which were replaying footage from the trial. Humans have been fighting each other for our entire history. Not with machines, but with our own hands, our own minds, our own bodies. We've never had the luxury of letting computers do our fighting for us. But that's primitive, protested Commander Ziltok. Inefficient. Why would you choose to fight personally when machines could do it better? Because, Chen said quietly, sometimes the machine breaks. Sometimes the computer makes the wrong calculation. Sometimes the logical choice gets you killed. When that happens, you need someone who can think on their feet, adapt to the impossible, and keep fighting even when everything goes wrong. She walked over to Captain Thompson, who had led the assault inside the fortress. Thompson, what did you do when the AI changed the corridor layout? Made my own corridors, ma'am, Thompson replied with a grin. AI kept trying to control where I went, so I stopped going where it wanted me to go. He blew holes in walls that were supposed to be impenetrable, Chen explained to the stunned aliens. Not because he had better weapons, but because he refused to play by the rules your AI expected. General Vorth was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was thoughtful. You're saying that our military doctrine has a fundamental flaw. Not a flaw, Chen corrected gently. A limitation. Your technology is incredible. Your weapons are more powerful than anything humans have ever built. Your defenses could stop our most advanced attacks, but they're all designed to fight other technological civilizations. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of representatives from dozens of species. What happens when you encounter someone who doesn't use your kind of technology? Someone who thinks differently, fights differently, approaches problems from angles you never considered? We adapt, Admiral Kextall said confidently. "We always have." "But you can't adapt to something you can't understand," Chen replied. "Your AI tried to adapt to our tactics, but it kept trying to find the logic in what we were doing. There wasn't any logic. There was just experience, instinct, and the willingness to do whatever it takes to complete the mission." Ambassador Zexathara spoke slowly. "You're suggesting that the galaxy's military doctrine needs to change." "I'm suggesting that maybe there's value in diversity," Chen said. "Your technology is amazing, but it's not the only way to solve problems. Our methods are primitive, but they work in situations where your advanced systems fail," she gestured to her soldiers. "These 12 humans didn't defeat your fortress through superior firepower or advanced technology. They did it through teamwork, creativity, and the willingness to think outside the parameters your AI expected." "What are you proposing?" General Vorth asked. "Partnership," Chen said simply. "Not as primitive beings who need to be protected and guided, but as equals who bring different strengths to the table. You have technology that could solve problems we can't even imagine. We have approaches that could handle situations your technology can't adapt to." The chamber erupted in discussion. Representatives from hundreds of species debated in dozens of languages. The idea was radical, unprecedented, and completely contrary to 50,000 years of galactic military doctrine. But they had all seen the recordings. They had all watched 12 primitive soldiers with outdated weapons accomplish something that the galaxy's finest military minds had declared impossible. When the debate finally died down, Ambassador Zexathara spoke for the entire council. "Captain Chen, the Galactic Council offers humanity full membership with equal status. Furthermore, we would like to propose the establishment of a joint training facility where our species can learn from each other." Chen smiled. "We accept, Ambassador, and we'd be honored to share what we know." "What would you call this new training doctrine?" General Vorth asked. Chen thought for a moment, then grinned. "How about combined arms training? Technology and tactics working together, machines and minds. The best of both approaches." As the council session ended and representatives began to disperse, General Vorth approached Chen privately. "Captain," he said quietly, "I have to ask, how many more surprises does humanity have?" Chen's grin widened. "General, what we showed you today, that's just basic infantry tactics. Wait until you see what our engineers can do, or our pilots, or our scientists." "Should I be worried?" Vorth asked. "No," Chen replied, clapping the massive alien on one of his 4 shoulders. "You should be excited. The galaxy just got a lot more interesting." 6 months later, the first Combined Arms Training Center opened on a moon orbiting Kepler 442c. For the first time in 50,000 years, organic beings and machines began learning to fight together instead of separately, and across the galaxy, military strategists realized that sometimes the most advanced solution was knowing when to use the simplest one. The age of purely technological warfare was over. The age of adaptation had begun.